And last but not least, and this is someone who I have had the pleasure of connecting with before. I apologize for my frantic voice. I was actually rushing to the airport when I connected with Chaplain Ruth. But when you talk about lovely human beings, we're talking about Chaplain Ruth Belonsky. Presently, Ruth Belonsky serves as chaplain at Malibu Jewish Center and Synagogue, and she is also as an independent community chaplain. Woo, sorry about that. She has a master's in Jewish studies. She is also a Jewish chaplain, AJRCA, in addition to degrees in music education, violin performance, and teaching from Trinity College of London. We are going to have to do something. I played the violin for 13 years, so let me go tune it up.
Next time I'll start with that.
I know. We could have been the musical entertainment. Now that I know, we've got the chaplain band going on here. Chaplain Ruth was born in South Africa and was the youngest elected city councilwoman in East London, South Africa. She also was an activist against the apartheid government and was forced to leave South Africa and come to the United States in 1979. She was offered asylum by then Ambassador to the United States, Don McHenry, and she is founder and director of nonprofit ASAP, Aid to Southern African People, here in Los Angeles. She has continued as an activist against the South African government until 1990. She is a facilitator of the Southern Africa Resource Project at UCLA. She's also a presenter for law enforcement training for the Sheriff's Department on behalf of the National Alliance for Mental Illness, Los Angeles City Council, NAMI. As a member of the Department of Mental Health here at LA County, she serves on the Faith-Based Advocacy Council since 2008, and she also served on the executive board as a past chair. Please welcome Chaplain Ruth. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. And I think that anybody who has experienced issues with mental illness, mental wholeness, and mental healing has felt this. And maybe some of us are still feeling that at this moment. As a member of the Faith-Based Advocacy Council on the executive board, I was drawn by the mission of integrating spirituality for hope, wellness, and recovery through community partnership while attending an annual conference in 2008. I have to read this because I'm not as young as the others. You know. I met the event organizer, Karen Goldberg, who invited me to attend the next council meeting. And this, in an effort to break the stigma of mental illness, a former department mental health director, Dr. Marvin Southard, launched this council, connecting to faith communities. And I think you were talking about that it's so difficult to find faith, spirituality, and mental health coming together. This is where we come together, the Faith-Based Advocacy Council. And because of all the things I heard, of course, I've crossed a whole lot of stuff out of what I was going to say, and I'm just going to maybe free flow along the way until I give him the signal to stop. So we encourage faith communities to see the whole person, focusing on personal strengths as a basis for recovery, and respecting diversity in life experience, worldview, ways of communication, and one's spiritual capacity, building through communities working toward fighting stigma, promoting mental wellness and mental wholeness. The Hebrew words refuat hanefesh mean caring for the soul. It is the hope that this panel today will bring in serious discussions and programs that will reduce the stigma of mental illness. How many of our communities do we know where it's so difficult, where we whisper and we don't speak out? We don't take that moment, just as we would say, I have breast cancer, I have a brain tumor, I have diabetes, I'm struggling with my mental health. Why is there such a stigma? And why are we so afraid of this? So many people feel spiritually alienated from the support of their faith communities, support that's desperately needed. If we try, we can heal the soul by our presence and our caring. First, it's necessary to recognize the need and then not to fear opening the door to caring. Over 30 years ago, our son, now in his 50s, was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. It's been a roller coaster ride for us as parents, as well as other family members. It is a family illness. The many times he was arrested for trespassing, difficulty to communicate with, our beautiful son became a stranger to us. He was a brilliant musician, but disappeared for years at a time, homeless, no money, one set of clothing and a backpack, any homeless person you would see on the street, returning finally 2 years ago. At times he has sought refuge in churches with gospel choirs because he loves the music, and synagogues with music, seemingly drawn to his traditional Jewish faith, but not knowing how to access this. Exodus 23:9 says, "You should not oppress a stranger, for you understand the heart of a stranger." But the stigma still prevails. As a Jewish and interfaith chaplain, the very category of stranger ceases to have meaning for me as I remember that the God of my understanding loves the stranger. In our everyday lives, the stranger is sometimes the refugee. We all come, I think, who are sitting here, from refugees at some stage. And I'll illuminate as I can a little later if I have time. Sometimes the person of color, age, youth, accent. I sometimes think I speak American, but I'm told I don't. Because I can say tomato instead of tomato. Small or large body, deafness, blindness, mental health challenges. We see people on the street. Sometimes we walk past them, step over them, or even become angry with them because they are unwilling or unable to reach out for or accept help. And even those who live with us and love, or we try to love. As a hospital chaplain from Providence Little Company of Mary, I was blessed and honored to be able to be at the bedside of many. And some people would say to me, "I'm not religious, you know," or "I don't know how to pray." And then they would kind of almost brush me off, and it was not always easy to get into a room with when people don't know you. You're just another person. But I was one of the few who didn't prod or poke or need to do anything medical or ask questions about how they were feeling on that day. I was able to meet those patients in their beds, feeling so vulnerable where they were. And as a Jewish and interfaith chaplain, I was trained to be with anybody, to sit and to listen and to find out where their deep spiritual needs were, and could just be talking about riding a bicycle along the beach and that moment of what was the word? I've forgotten now, that was used earlier. Transcendence, thank you very much. That's the gray hair, you know. That moment of transcendence, at any time, we each have our own ways of experiencing them. So occasionally, people exhibiting symptoms of mental illness have wandered off Pacific Coast Highway, discovering the Saturday morning services at Malibu Jewish Center and Synagogue, which is where I go and where I'm clergy as well. Mostly homeless, sitting in the back row, sometimes with shopping bags, perhaps muttering, maybe hearing voices, smelling bad, and occasionally disruptive, causing spiritual leaders and congregants to feel uncomfortable. They are the quintessential strangers. If anyone here in our audience today is a member of a faith community or any other community group, and you've had an encounter, I encourage you to acknowledge that discomfort. It's okay. It's okay to understand that we don't always know how to manage challenging moments, because each situation is different. But if they are accepted, they will begin to feel a part of a spiritual community. If not for the Faith-Based Advocacy Council, which informs about the many mental health resources in Los Angeles County, I would never have met the caring people of different faiths and cultures who have enriched my life. And finally, mental illness does not care about education or lack thereof, brilliance or a simple life. It's an equal opportunity attacker. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, alive